Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for. Let's get into today's episode. Hello guys. Today I'm doing a quick rundown around a few handy additions that I put in my hiking pack, and which is literally in my pack right now as I'm recording this, as I'm heading off to do the Larapinta Trail, or do a section of the Larapinta Trail next week when this episode is getting recorded. Released, I should say. And today I thought it would be really cool to share a few little bits and pieces that I am putting into my pack to both help my performance and my comfort and my recovery on the trail. So not the typical gear rundown or anything like that, but just a few bits and pieces that reflect a lot of the stuff that we talk about in this podcast and what I'm actually using. Now, at the time of you listening to this, if you're listening to this relatively fresh, I'm probably a couple of days into my little Larapinta adventure. Basically, if you haven't heard of it before, the Larapinta is a pretty solid trail in the middle of Australia through the desert. And it's something that a lot of Aussies are getting attracted to over the last 12 months or so, because considering international travel isn't really a reality at the moment. And I'm heading off with a company. I'm doing a bit of trip leading for this group who's sending me over. Basically, I'm going with a group of about 25 people. We're doing about 5 days worth of hiking on this trail, and I'm really looking forward to it. And literally just before I hopped on to record this episode, I ducked down the shops and got myself a whole bunch of supplies. And as I said, today I'm just going to talk you through a few things that are going into my pack, which can really help on the recovery side of things, the performance side of things, and also the comfort side of things. And we have talked about these things quite a bit, in bits and pieces in the podcast, but today I'm just going to give you a rundown on exactly what's going in. Now, first and foremost, let's talk about recovery. So essentially into my pack, there are two things that are going in to really help recovery. Number one is a cork massage ball. Now, as you know, self-myofascial release or self-massage can be a really good way to help ease off aching muscles, to help aid your recovery a little bit, and also help deal with any aches and pains that may creep up, both in your training, but actually when you're on the trail. Now, typically when you're on the trail, carrying around a foam roller or a heavy lacrosse ball or something like that isn't super realistic, but the cork massage ball is a super cool option. You can buy these online for like $10. They are not much at all, and they weigh about half a gram, but they can be a really handy addition to do a little bit of self-care, a little bit of self-rolling on the trail. And I highly recommend anyone listening to get their hands on one. So that's the first thing that's in my pack, and I'm planning on doing a little bit of a rolling each evening at the end of the day. Now, the second thing going in my pack to help with recovery is a set of compression recovery tights, which is a really easy addition to sort of get a quick win on your recovery. Essentially, my plan for the recovery tights and what I typically recommend to people is I generally wear them around camp at the end of days worth of hiking. And what they can do is just keep the blood moving around, help flush out waste products a little bit, and generally just make their legs feel a little bit better the next day. If I've had a pretty strenuous day or I am getting an ache or pain, which occasionally does creep up, I'll probably wear the tights overnight as well while I'm sleeping, but typically I wear it around the camp. So there's those two things on recovery side, the cork massage ball, the recovery tights. They barely weigh anything, but they are worth their weight in gold. Now, on the food, for this particular hike, most of the meals are being organized by the tour operators because it is with a tour group, and I'm coming on board and representing a company for that. So I don't have to worry about meals so much. But saying that, I have no idea how much food they're providing. And I know one thing about myself, that if I get hungry, even on the slightest on the trail, my enjoyment goes way down. And I start getting frustrated. I start counting down the miles and the minutes. And all in all, I just don't want to be hungry. Now, on the other side of that, basically, as we talked about in this podcast many times before, sort of constantly eating and constantly grazing on the trail and try to sort of eat a little bit of something before you get hungry pretty regularly can be a really, really effective technique to help improve your performance and reduce your fatigue levels on the trail. So essentially for my pack, I've got a whole bunch of snacks, probably a bit of overkill for the hike that we're doing because I'm sure I will get a few snacks from the group. But either way, I've packed in a whole bunch of snakes and gummy bears. The idea around that is quick digesting, easy to reach carbohydrates, which is exactly what our body wants when we're on the trail as we're going through. Quickly digesting, they won't sit in the stomach, they won't take much energy in digestion, really, really easy. I've also got my new favorite type of sweet food, well, not sweet food, but favorite type of hiking snack is the sweet and sour gummy bears, which I discovered the other week. Ooh, my gosh, I got pretty pumped about them when I had them the first time, so I've got quite a few of those. Now, I'm also aware that alongside that, I typically get over sweet pretty quickly and I only really have a little bit. So I've also got a bunch of pretzels as well, which I'm going to bring, which I'm sort of enjoying pretzels quite a bit lately. So they're a little bit more salty, they're still easy to digest, they're still mainly carbohydrate based, and that's a nice thing to balance that out. And then alongside that as well, I've got a few Cliff Bars as well. Not for any reason the Cliff Bars are, outrageously amazing, but they're an easy option to sort of fly with. They've got high energy, they've got a few electrolytes in them, and, just in case I am getting hungry, it's going to be a bit more solid than just snacking on those quick digesting things. So they're essentially my snacks, which I'm going to be having around the meals. And the idea behind that is, as I said, quick digesting energy. I'm going to be having that sort of pretty regularly on the trail as I go, and hopefully that should keep me going. And hopefully that should avoid me ever getting hungry, which is a nightmare for myself when I'm hiking. Now, alongside that, there's a couple of little supplements I'm bringing. Nothing too crazy, but essentially I'm bringing an electrolyte supplement, which my favorite is Tailwind there, Tailwind. And I'm going to be portioning it out before I go. And essentially the idea behind that is going to be electrolyte supplement, because obviously we've got hot days, we're going to be sweating a lot, and we want that when we're doing types of hot weather hiking. But also alongside that, it does have more carbohydrates in it as well. So it's an easy way for me to get more food into me, essentially. So I'm bringing that alongside me, and I'm also bringing a packet of NoDoz, which are basically caffeine pills. Now, for me, I like a couple of coffees through the day, but I'm also very, very aware that when I'm going off someone else's itinerary and someone else's organization, and I don't have, control over everything, I'm pretty aware that relying on someone to, boil some water at lunchtime or have coffee available or whatever it may be is not the smartest thing in the world. They may very well do that, but I know I'm going to get grumpy if I need a bit of caffeine in the afternoon and coffee's not available, because I have been in that situation before. So the NoDoz is a really easy option. They're just caffeine pills, just pop them in, have a drink, and they'll give me that little afternoon bump that I want. So really, really easy option there. And again, weighs absolutely nothing. And then the final two things that go in my pack, which are pretty typical, but I thought I'd worth mentioning them anyway, is a notepad and a pen, in the sense that at the end of a day's hiking, I typically have a lot of stuff going through my head. And quite often when I'm lying in my tent, even though I'm absolutely knackered and tired and had a big day, quite often I'll be pretty wired in my head. And if I've been having all these things churning through my head, all these ideas, all these epiphanies, all these business things, and they're going through my head, it takes me a while to get to sleep, and it's not something I really want to be dealing with. So a notepad and a pen is a really easy option for me. I just jot down anything as I go through the day, and I also do a little bit of a brain dump at the end of a day's hiking, just before the sun goes down if I do get the opportunity, and just write down anything that's in my head just to clear it all out. And then the final thing as well is I'm going to bring my Kindle, because I do like that as the end of a day when I'm in my tent or in the swag in this particular hike, just to cruise along and just sort of, just read a little bit for, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And I do that every single night anyway. And it's something I like to keep on doing on the trail. So a lot of that stuff, it's probably stuff you have already heard before, and it's probably stuff we talked about in the podcast and everything like that. But for me, this is sort of the culmination of a lot of these little hints and tips and ideas that we talk about on this podcast, beyond the training, but actually applying these things onto the trail. So I've got my recovery sorted, I've got my snacking sorted, I've got a couple of areas which are supplements to fill in gaps, which I know are sometimes a bit tricky, and I've also got a couple of things to help, deal with myself mentally. And hopefully all of those things together should lead up into a pretty comfortable and happy hike, and I can generally just go off and enjoy myself. So a little bit of thought there. I hope you got a bit of insight into that and a few ideas. I'm sure everyone's packing list in this situation is different, but if you sort of think about those ideas, recovery, nutrition, filling in gaps, and also just winding down, everyone will come up with ideas for that. And I think that can be pretty valuable. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. As I said, of the day of this release, I'm probably 2 days into my hike. So if anyone is messaging me or anything like that, I will get back to you when I'm back in action. And I'm sure you'll hear plenty about it when I'm back. And I'm sure I'll do a couple of podcasts around things I've learned or things that have gone through. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this today, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.